Hello and welcome to the Mindful Running podcast. Today we have a very interesting topic which has been debated many times and is totally discussion worthy. Feet are our foundation, but the footwear that most of us wear make that foundation shaky and weak. It's time to let your feet do what is natural. Is going barefoot the best way to deal with foot issues? Does walking and running barefoot strengthen your feet? Barefoot running is a journey and it doesn't miraculously cure you. But it's good to get back to basics and honor the ancestral living choice of footwear and integrate it with your lifestyle. Today, I'm excited to be talking to Steven Sashen, the founder and CEO of Xero Shoes, on benefits of barefoot and natural movement running.
Here we are.
Good morning, Steven.
Good evening to you.
How are you?
I'm well. I will admit it's a Friday morning for me, and I was at a trade show all about running shoes for the last 4 days. So my brain is a little mush. I don't know if you've ever done a trade show where you're just talking to people all day, every day, and then by the end of it, you can't remember your own name. So that's sort of where I am right now.
Oh gosh. I hope this talk is a refresher for you.
This will be refreshing, definitely.
Yeah. So Steven, why don't you tell people who you are?
Sure. So as you said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Xero Shoes. We make footwear that is so lightweight and so comfortable. We've had people email us saying that they accidentally went to bed still wearing their shoes because they forgot they were wearing them. And what makes them so comfortable is they're designed to work like human feet. They're designed to let your body do what's natural, starting feet first. And where this all started is that I got back into sprinting, not running. I don't do distance. I'm a 100-meter sprinter. So I got back into sprinting 14 years ago when I was 45 and was getting injured all the time. And a friend of mine who's a world champion runner suggested that I try running barefoot to see if I learned anything. And what I learned instantly was why I was getting injured. And more, I learned how to stop getting injured. Because when you run barefoot, doing it wrong hurts and doing it right feels good. Now, I'm going to pause for a second and say, I'm not actually going to try and talk people into walking or running barefoot. There's reasons for doing it and reasons for not. So don't think that, I'm trying to convert you and make everyone throw away their shoes, but we'll talk about that a bit more. But suffice it to say, that natural experience of feeling my bare feet on the ground, whether it was rocks and trails or grass or roads or sidewalks, whatever we were on, taught me how to get rid of my injuries. So I became a Masters All-American sprinter. That means I'm one of the fastest men over 55 in America. And I wanted that natural movement experience as much as I could have it. So the same thing that I was getting barefoot, but I didn't want to be barefoot all the time. And we started by making sandals just as a hobby. I was buying sheets of rubber. I was buying long things of cord. I was making sandals for people literally sitting on the street, just, cutting out patterns for their foot and lacing them up. And then one day someone said he was writing a book on barefoot running. And if I had a website, he could put me in the book. Now, I've been an internet marketer for a very long time, since 1992. And so I had built hundreds of websites. And so I rush home and I pitch this incredible, brilliant opportunity to my wife, who assures me that I am completely an idiot and it won't be worth our time. It won't make any money, just a distraction. And so I shouldn't build a website. And I agreed with her. I said I wouldn't do it. And then when she went to bed, I built a website. And so that was 12 years ago last week. And now we've helped hundreds of thousands of people, almost 1 million people around the world, discover the fun and the benefits of natural movement, whether they're in bare feet or in shoes like Xero Shoes.
Right. Thanks so much for that, Steven. We have some people saying hello from Colorado. Huge fan of Steven and Xero.
How funny. Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. And then we have a barefoot runner, in fact, Thomas Bobby Phillip. He's a barefoot runner. My wife has been wearing Xero shoes since over 3 years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And yeah, Amelia says again, I've been a fan since the Shark Tank days. So tell us about that. Tell us about your Shark Tank experience.
Well, for people, so the Shark Tank in the US and Dragon's Den in the UK and Canada and also in Japan as well. So for people who don't know, it's a show where business people come and pitch their idea to 5 sharks who can possibly invest in the company. And we were on Shark Tank in 2013 when we just had our do-it-yourself sandal kit company. So again, we were selling sheets of rubber and string and instructions on how to make footwear that looked like what human beings have been making for almost 10,000 years. And we turned down a $400,000 offer from one of the sharks, Kevin O'Leary, because he wanted half the company, which was not even close. We were offering 8%, and he said, I'll give you the $400,000 for 50%. And we said, no. In fact, my wife, Lena, and I have a debate. I remember her saying something that she doesn't remember saying. And so I don't know if she did, and she doesn't know if she did. So at one point, when Kevin made his offer for 50%, it was such a non-starter that we forgot he even made it. And then at one point, Robert says, there's an offer on the table. And we went, oh, yeah, right. And Lena says to Kevin, so are you bringing anything to this deal other than money? And he says, well, I'm a smart businessman. I've got a big Rolodex. And I remember her saying, so nothing, which was the appropriate response. So I'm going to stick with the idea that she definitely said it.
Yeah. It probably in the recording, it would have got edited or something.
So we were in there for about 45 minutes, and it turned into 9 minutes. So there's a lot of stuff that didn't get in there. In fact, every objection that they had to what we were doing, we hit that out of the park so far that at one point, Robert jumps out of his chair and yells at us. He goes, you have a perfect answer for every question. And we said, well, it's our business. So we didn't get the investment, but it was great being on the show. It really brought 8 million people got to see what we were doing, and it brought in about 3 months worth of sales in the week following the show. Now, what's amazing for me and for Lena is what was a month's worth of sales then is now what we do in a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Things have grown.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have Ajay saying ordered my first pair.
Ah, wonderful. I can't wait to hear what you experience.
Yeah. And then we have maybe see Apurva. He's actually in the Bay Area. Maybe see one of your shoes with what you feel are the features that are important, a little show and tell.
Yeah. So normally on this rack behind me, I have like 50 pairs of shoes, but we were just at this trade show, like I mentioned, and apparently they stole all the shelves and sent them to the trade show because all the shoes, I walked in the office this morning, they're all lying on the floor. So I'm going to give you a tour about a normal running shoe. And when I say this, you have to keep in mind that the normal shoe is only a 50-year-old idea. It was the early 1970s when people came up with this idea. And I'll tell you something interesting about how they did it too. So pardon me, one sec. Here we go. So for the first 9,950 years of human history, people made things that looked more like what we do. But let's talk about what people have been doing for the last 50 years. So this is a standard looking running shoe. And there's a couple things about it that are really interesting in a not good way. So the first is it has this elevated heel, which messes with your posture. When you lift up your heel, that changes the way you're standing, and that force is going to go into your knees and your hips and your back. So, and you might ask, why are they doing that? And you might think it's because of the cushioning. We'll talk about that in a second because it's actually not. But anyway, the elevated heel is a problem because it creates postural problems. Your feet are amazing. You have a quarter of the bones and joints of your entire body in your feet and ankles. They're supposed to bend and flex and move. Every joint is designed to move. Well, this shoe, like most running shoes, it barely flexes, and that's not even where your foot bends. So it's not letting your foot do what's natural. And in fact, research shows that when you support your foot this way, when you don't let it move naturally with arch support or stiff shoes, you lose up to 17% of the muscle mass in your foot within as little as 12 weeks. So you get progressively weaker. When is weaker better than stronger? As far as I know, never. So that's another issue with this is it's supporting the foot, which means it's not letting it move, which means it's making those muscles weaker. Like if you put your arm in a cast, 8 weeks later, it doesn't come out stronger. It comes out atrophied and weaker. Same thing happens to your feet. The next thing is let's talk not about the cushioning, but just this amount of stuff between you and the ground. So another amazing thing about your feet, you have 200,000 nerve endings in your soles, more than anywhere but your fingertips and your lips. So not an accident. You're supposed to feel things to send information first to your spinal cord, which is for reflexes, and then to your brain, which is about balance and agility and mobility. And if you're not getting that information to your brain, it can't help you move properly. So that becomes really problematic. You want to make sure that you're getting the feedback. So it's a loop. Basically, your feet are telling your brain what's happening with your body, which then controls your body, starting with the feet and being able to move and bend and flex to make you move efficiently and effectively. So then let's talk about cushioning. So everyone thinks this idea of cushioning is a great idea because cushioning feels good. You lie down on something, cushion feels good. You sleep on something, or sit on something, cushion feels good. You put on something with cushioning, it feels good. But there's lots of things that we do that feel good that aren't actually good for us. There's lots of things we eat that taste really good, but aren't really good for us. Well, it's the same thing with cushioning. It can feel really good when you're standing there, but not be good for you, in part for two reasons. One, it doesn't do what you think it does. Cushioning doesn't actually reduce forces. It doesn't make it easier on your body. What it does is actually more interesting. Your feet have what are called mechanoreceptors. They're sensitive to pressure. And the cushioning disperses the pressure. So you don't feel the pressure, which feels good, but it doesn't change the force. So the force is still going up into your body. And when you have cushioning, especially if you land on your heel, that force is going up through your joints, instead of using your muscles, ligaments, and tendons to put your body in a strong position and protect your joints. And the research from Christine Pollard and many others shows that cushioning does not reduce forces and often can increase it, because those mechanoreceptors in your feet, your brain is looking for information about what you're stepping on and how to adapt. And if it can't feel that, it'll sometimes land harder just to try to get some information. So the first thing, again, cushioning doesn't cushion. And it also makes it harder for your brain to work properly. But the second thing is cushioning breaks down. As soon as you start wearing it, it starts to break down, and it'll break down in directions that are not necessarily good. So I saw a guy, he was walking in front of me at the airport. The cushioning on the inside of his shoe had totally worn out. So he's walking like this, which is not good. So his ankle isn't aligned, his knee isn't aligned, his hip isn't aligned, his back isn't aligned. And so that's a problem. And cushioning breaks down really fast. Most running shoes, they say you should replace them every 300 to 500 miles because that's when things are broken down. But the research shows that they start to be bad after as little as 150 miles. And the new maximally cushioned shoes, they break down in as little as 50 miles. So that's that. And last but not least, look at the shape of this thing. Is this the shape of your foot?
No.
No. And if it is, if someone says yes, it's not supposed to be. Your feet are supposed to spread and your toes are supposed to spread. Like if I asked you to do push-ups, you don't do this, you do this. Because that's better for balance and better for strength production, force production. Same thing with your feet. So it's a problem as well. Now, you may ask, why do shoes look like this? And here's a story that most people don't know. Back in the early 70s, Bill Bowerman from Nike was getting runners coming to him for training, and they were getting Achilles tendonitis. And he was in a building where there were some sports podiatrists, and he came up to them and said, what do I do about this Achilles tendonitis problem? And the doctor said, well, clearly these runners have been wearing higher heeled dress shoes, so their Achilles have shortened. So they need higher heeled running shoes to accommodate for their shortened Achilles. So put a wedge of foam in the shoe. All right, let's cut to 30 years later. One of these doctors is at a track meet with a guy who I developed this shoe with, actually. He was someone who worked with Bill Bowerman at Nike for decades. And my friend says to this guy, so your design idea, the elevated heel wedge shoe with a flared sole, that was what you came up with. And now every footwear company does it. What do you think about that? And the doctor says, it was the biggest mistake we ever made. We had no research behind this. We had no proof that their Achilles shortened. We had no data that showed that this would be in any way better. We just made it up because we were making so many prosthetics and orthotics that we thought everything needed a prosthetic solution, and we were wrong. So that's how this happened. But it started selling really well because it was something unusual. And the footwear industry is a bunch of copycats. If something starts to sell really well, everybody copies it because they're terrified that no one else is ever going to buy what they're doing. So this trade show that I was at over the last 4 days, every company had a shoe with padding this thick because they were all terrified that no one was going to buy anything else. In fact, one of the companies said, more of what you're asking for. That was their advertising slogan. But the customers were never asking for this. Some shoe company made it, and they kept telling a great marketing story that cushioning is good, more cushioning is better. So people started buying it, and now everyone's doing it, except for us, of course. All right. So that's the long version of what's wrong with this. So now we'll talk about what's right with doing it naturally. So what we do instead is first a wider foot-shaped toe box. So your toes can spread. Low to the ground for balance and agility. You know, the higher you get off the ground, the more unstable you become. So your feet are supposed to bend and flex, really, really flexible so they can bend and flex. And this is also perfect for travel.
Wow.
Yeah. The next thing is the soles are designed to give you traction and protection, but also that ground feedback that your brain is looking for to know how to effectively move your body. And then also our soles, instead of, replace them every 300 to 500 miles, we developed a new rubber we call Field True rubber that has a 5,000 mile sole warranty. So they're designed to be really durable at the same time. Also, all of our shoes have a removable 2 millimeter sock liner or insole. So if you want more or less barefoot feeling, you can have that. And last but not least, they're so lightweight that's another factor. Like I said, some people have emailed us saying they went to bed still wearing their Xero shoes because they forgot they had them on. And we have boots, shoes, and sandals for casual and performance use, running, walking, hiking, yoga, CrossFit, climbing Kilimanjaro, anything you can think of. And people do all of that in all of our shoes, both casual and performance stuff for whatever you can think of. And that's the gist of what makes these better. But let me actually focus on the important part. It's not about the footwear. It's about the form. Running with proper form is what's better for you. It just so happens that some footwear makes that almost impossible to do, and some footwear makes that effortless to do. So something like this, it's hard to run with proper form because the heel, at the very least, just gets in the way. So there's a video you posted actually from Daniel Lieberman showing African runners who are habitually barefoot, and you watch as their foot comes down to the ground, their heel just like barely misses the ground before their foot lands. Well, when you have a shoe with a big heel, the heel ends up hitting the ground in front of where their foot would naturally land. So they end up heel striking, and that sends what he identified as an impact transient force of spike of force that goes right up through your joints. So when you're landing on your heel with that in front of where you would normally land, it's like putting on the brakes every time you land. You're slowing down and then you have to reaccelerate. So, and the other thing that gets in the way is if you do land on your midfoot, which is the way you're supposed to land, and I'll prove that to you in a second, which is really kind of fun. The problem with having this high heel is you can't use your Achilles. Your heel doesn't come down all the way, and your Achilles tendon is basically a spring. And so if you don't let your heel come down, or you're not able to, you're not getting that free energy return from your body. So that's the other problem with that. And again, with something like this, we don't get in the way. We let your foot do what's natural, etc. And wait, what did I just say? I was going to say more about. I lost the thought. Spring, Achilles. Landing on your foot. So there's this big argument about should you land on your forefoot or is landing on your heel okay? And people look at professional runners and go, that professional runner, he's landing on his heel. Well, first of all, who cares? And I say that because if you're not an Olympic caliber runner who's doing everything he can think of or she can think of to win a medal, to hopefully make enough money to support yourself for a while, you may do things that will allow you to run better in that circumstance, but isn't going to let you be a healthy, happy runner when you're 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. And also, just because it looks like someone is touching their heel first doesn't mean they're landing on their heel. Because if they're just touching here, but they don't get weight on their foot till they get underneath their body, it's kind of deceptive. The only way you can tell what someone's really doing is with a force plate, not just by looking at pictures or video. So that's an important thing. But here's the interesting thing as an experiment to see how you should actually land on your foot. So if you can find like a couple of books or a small box that's like 4 inches high, you want to get one of those. And the reason for 4 inches is when you're running, that's about how much you bounce. Your hips, will go up and down about 4 inches. So what I want people to do when you get a chance, and you can just imagine doing this too, is you stand on the box or the books and then you step off. Don't like try to jump forward, just step off and see how you land. And I want you to land and then jump off one leg. So when you step off and land and jump off one leg, you'll notice you land on the ball of your foot with your foot underneath your center of mass, not in front of your body, not behind your body, right underneath you. And then you jump off and you'll feel that you have more spring because your muscles, ligaments, and tendons are shock absorbers and springs. And your arch of your foot is the first place where you get that first ability to handle that kind of force. So you land on the ball of your foot, that engages your arch, that engages your calf, that engages your Achilles, that engages all the tendons around your knee, that engages your glutes and hamstrings. That's what lets you move properly. So if you step off a small ledge and land and jump that way, and that feels right, guess what? Running should be the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Steven, why is it that all these companies are not making minimalist shoes?
Well, a couple of them tried. Back in 2009 and 2010, when the book Born to Run came out and got really popular, the shoe companies at first were terrified. They were literally putting out articles saying that if you ran barefoot, you were going to step on hypodermic needles and get Ebola, and your kids wouldn't get into college, and you'd forget how to spell. Or, I mean, they were just making things up. It was crazy because they were literally terrified everyone was going to throw away their running shoes and start running barefoot. Because the book, even though it didn't say run barefoot, it just promoted this idea as being better for you. Yeah. So by 2010, though, they started coming out with what they called barefoot shoes so they could capture some of this money. And they weren't very good. They, in fact, research from Harvard's Irene Davis showed that the minimalist shoes that the big companies were making were actually worse for you than either barefoot or regular shoes because they had just enough cushioning that they didn't let your brain get the feedback that you need for a proper gait. And they also were often too narrow. And they also often still had a little bit of a heel lift. So they weren't really barefoot or minimalist shoes, but they called them that. But the bigger problem is they realized they couldn't tell two stories. They couldn't say, this is better for you, minimalist, this is better for you, maximalist. And so they just backed out. In fact, one of the companies that was doing really well was committing to not promoting their minimalist products as their sales were doubling every year because they knew they just couldn't tell that story. So that's the biggest reason is, but the other one is simply this. We've had the CEOs of 3 multi-billion-dollar brands say directly to a friend of ours, not to our face, but directly to a friend, what Xero Shoes is doing, the natural movement thing, is totally real. But we can't do it because if we did, it would be admitting that everything we said for 50 years is a lie. And it has been because the only thing they've done in the last 50 years is some form of cushioning, some form of arch support. And you may notice that when they come out with a new one, they never say, sorry about that crap we've been selling for the last 5 years. We just found out that it was horrible. Here's something that's really good. But it's the same story every couple of years. In India, did they have the story of the boy who cried wolf?
No.
Oh, so the story is that there was a young shepherd boy, and he's just, bored and just out trying to take care of his flock of sheep. And he just starts crying, there's a wolf attacking the sheep. And the villagers come and they,
of course.
Okay,
yes,
good.
yes.
So with shoe companies, it's like the shoe company that cried cushioning is every couple of years, they cry new cushioning and everyone runs to the store and buys those shoes, but it's no better than whatever else they were doing before. It's just a different way of doing the same thing.
Yeah. And there's one very interesting thing that you actually call shoes foot coffins.
I do. Well, I do that because, they're killing your feet. And so away you go. And also, there's actually another part to this, and people misinterpret what I'm about to say very often. So I'm going to try and be very careful. If you lose the ability to move your feet well, if you lose the feedback from your feet to your brain and back, it impairs your balance. It can really negatively impact your balance quite a bit. And the longer this goes on, and of course, losing strength as well, this is a vicious cycle. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And so my father was one of these people who had been in big, thick padded shoes, lost the ability to balance really well and didn't have good foot strength. And he kind of shuffled his feet as a result. And one day he was almost 81 years old, and he was shuffling and hit a small ledge. This is the real problem, is that you lose the ability to correct when you don't have that feedback and that flexibility and that strength. And he tripped on a small ledge and he fell down and he broke his hip and he died 2 weeks later. Now, I'm not saying shoes killed him. That's what people say. I'm saying that if you have weak feet that don't feel the ground well and can't adapt well, that can lead to things that do cause many, many, many deaths. Elderly people breaking their hip is a real problem. And I'm not saying that if he had worn our shoes, he would have never fallen down, he would have never gotten injured. But we have seen, there's research coming out about balance and foot strength and minimalist footwear. And since it hasn't been published, I can't say anything more than it will be very interesting to people.
Yeah. So I think what happens is, like, when you have more cushioned shoes, then, like you said, you don't get that feedback. So
Right.
you're not able to interpret where you're walking, what is the surface like,
Yeah.
and, anything can happen. You
Well,
don't have control.
and again, you're higher, and it's like being on stilts. You have worse balance the higher you get off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have a question here.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Does the hip load really reduce with these minimalist shoes? As I have arthritis, so apart from knee load, it's sometimes also hip load.
So I can say that there isn't research specifically looking at the loading forces in the, pardon me, that's looked at loading forces in the hip, in part because it's much harder to measure hip loading forces than it is tibial loading forces, knee loading forces. But the basic idea is still the same. In fact, let me start with the knee part first. Dr. Isabel Sacco in Brazil took elderly women, 65-year-old plus, and who had knee osteoarthritis. And they not like just self-reported knee pain, actual x-ray showing they had arthritis. And she put them in minimalist shoes. She didn't use ours. She wanted to use something local to Brazil that was really inexpensive so that it was no obstacle to anybody. So it's a thin, flexible, lightweight shoe, but it still had a pointy toe, but that's okay. Over the next 6 months, most of these women, their osteoarthritis went away. And the reason is because they started walking better. Again, like when you walk barefoot, landing on your heel hurts. So you stop landing on your heel. Putting your foot way out in front of your body feels bad because you're putting on the brakes. So you start putting your foot underneath your body and you start using your muscles, ligaments, and tendons as springs and shock absorbers, and they protect the joint when they do that. So I was talking to Isabel just a couple of weeks ago, and I said, what do you think changed? And she said their gait changed and they got stronger. So they were supporting their joints better. And that was what made the osteoarthritis go away. While there's no research, I think it's easy to extrapolate that the same thing happens when you're doing that with your hip, when you're actually using your hip, when you're flexing instead of landing, basically sending a spike of force straight up through the joints, through your knee, into your hip. So we hear from people, again, I'm not making medical claims when I say this, but if you look at the reviews on our website, you hear from people all the time who talk about how their hip pain or back pain has been helped by doing what's natural, letting your muscles, ligaments, and tendons do what they're supposed to do. Again, it's not about the footwear, it's about the form. And the simplest thing is that when you land with your foot more underneath your body, you're using the entire spring-like mechanism of your lower body, which starts really at your navel to be protective.
Yeah. Thanks. And we have another question, Steven. Yeah. So how easy it is to transition to minimalist shoes, having worn cushioned shoes? I think this is for the majority of the people, and I had this question to ask you, that what does it take to get out of the foot coffin and get connected back to the earth?
into live feet.
Into life,
how to become resurrected without being a zombie. So there's two components to this. One is it depends on what you're doing. If you're just walking, then there's a high probability you can just switch right away. But you still want to be smart about this. You don't want to just, if you're on your feet all day, you might not want to. You probably don't want to just switch to minimalist shoes and wear them all day immediately. You want to maybe try for an hour or 2 hours and see how you feel. This is really the most important thing, is what I'm going to talk about, is listening to the feedback you get from your body and deciding what to do next. So I'm going to come back to this. So if you're just walking, probably fine. If you're running, you want to have a transition program. And there's not a specific transition program that works for everybody. Everybody's a little bit different. How well you feel the ground is different. How good your proprioceptive skills are. How well you know where your body is in space is different. There's some people who I say, if you put your arm out parallel to the ground and they go like this, they don't, it's not that they don't know parallel, they just don't know where their body is. So the first group of people, if they don't have good sensation, if they're not feeling well, I don't mean feeling ill. I mean, if they don't get sensations from their feet well, because they've been in shoes for so long, they just need to walk around on mildly unpleasant surfaces just to wake up that nervous system again. So if you tape your fingers together, after a little while, your brain literally changes shape and thinks you only have one finger. Now,
Oh,
luckily, your brain is not wired for that. So if you take the tape off, eventually you'll get the sensations back and your brain will reshape and you'll have two fingers again. But for a while, when your brain thinks you only have one finger, you literally won't be able to move them independently. So same thing with your feet. If you kept your feet cooped up, your brain has basically said, oh, you don't care what's happening down there? Okay, I'll change shape. If you start giving it stimulation again, it comes back to the proper shape. So first group of people start, and unfortunately, there's no self-diagnosis for this, but you can start by just walking barefoot, go out to, I don't know, go out to the curb and back, go out to a street and back.
yeah.
Walk again on something that's just giving you some stimulation, but isn't painful. Again, the second group of people, they don't have great skills about knowing where their body is. Video can be really helpful because I've met people who say, well, I don't overstride. I don't put my foot out in front of my body. I don't heel strike. And then they send me a video and they're overstriding and heel striking and they just don't even know it. So
They don't
video
know
can
it.
be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. The third group of people, they can tell if it hurts. They have good proprioceptive skills. We can just give them some cues, some ideas about things to think about. They can just speed up the learning process. Because again, like if you go barefoot, and I'll come back to that in a second. If you go barefoot and you just pay attention and try to find a way to make it feel good and fun, then you'll eventually figure all of this out. But that you can shorten the learning process. So for them, you just give them some cues like, imagine thinking about lifting your foot off the ground before it even touches the ground. So you barely want your foot to touch the ground, or imagine your foot is on a wheel. And so a wheel only touches the ground very briefly, tiny, tiny little bit. Or think about, instead of pushing off the ground, lifting your foot off the ground. Like if you step on a bee and it stings you, you don't push off the ground because then it's driving the stinger in more. You reflexively flex your hip and lift your foot off the ground. So think about that, like lifting your foot off the ground. Or think about here, I don't know if they ever showed the cartoon, the Flintstones in India.
Yeah.
Okay, so when Fred Flintstone starts his car, his feet are behind him and they never catch up. And so, think about doing that. So these are all just cues to help you, get proper form. Another one is actually pick up the speed that your feet are moving without running faster. So you're changing your cadence, the number of steps per minute. Just do a little bit. It's going to feel weird because you're not used to it. But if you're doing, and there's no magic number, by the way, there's no like 180 steps per minute, just a little faster than what you're used to. The research shows that if you pick up your cadence a little bit, the amount of force into the ground gets lower and lower and lower till you pick it up faster. And then it starts going up because you become a sprinter, which is what I am.
Yeah.
So, because sprinters put much more force in the ground. That's the only way to do it. So backing up to the transition process and the most important thing. If you're going to run, take off your shoes or get in Xero shoes, but barefoot is best if you can do it, and find a smooth, hard surface because it's going to give you the most feedback. Some people think they want to run on the grass, but that's just like taking the cushioning from a shoe and putting it on the entire planet. So, and besides, you don't know what's in the grass. There's things you step on or in that you don't want to step on or in.
Yeah.
So find a smooth, hard surface, take a very short run, 20 seconds, and then wait and see how you feel the next day. If you weren't having fun and feeling good, do something different to your having fun. And so, and if it feels good, and if it doesn't feel good, if you feel like maybe you just worked too hard, strained your muscles a little bit, like going to the gym and doing too many biceps curls, wait till you feel better and try it again. And when you can do it and it feels good, then add 10 seconds and then add 10 seconds the next time. Again, just wait till it feels good and fun. If you're not having fun, do something different till you are, because you can spot a barefoot or minimalist runner from 50 yards away. They're smiling. I mean, they just don't look like they're struggling to do it. They're enjoying it. If it feels like you hurt something in some way, wait till that gets better. And then again, think about some of those cues I gave, like make sure you're getting your feet underneath you, like stepping off that box or that book, like picking up your cadence just a little bit and just experiment. So like my first time running barefoot, again, I'm a sprinter. I've never run more than a mile in my life. And I did not like that at all. I do the 100 meters on the track. I don't even take turns because I don't have a GPS watch. So I don't know where I'd get lost. So,
so it's like 100-meter straight dash.
Right. Yeah. Anything other than that, much too confusing for me. So we're doing this barefoot run and we're running on grass and on roads and on sidewalks and on trails. And I was just so entranced by the experience. It was so interesting to me. And I kept experimenting. What happens if I run faster? What happens if I run slower? What happens if I move my legs faster or slower without changing the speed that I'm running? What happens if I land on this part of my foot or that part of my foot or the ball of my foot? I mean, I just was experimenting, and it was so interesting. At the end of this run, and we stopped only because people wanted to stop. I could have kept going for ages, it felt like. Someone had a GPS watch on, and I said, how far was that? She goes, that's a little over 5 kilometers. It's like,
Oh, wow.
What? I mean, and I had no idea. So on the one hand, that was amazing. On the other hand, I got a big blister on the ball of my left foot.
Oh.
Now, most people would say, see, this is nonsense. I got a blister. I, for some reason, thought, how come my right foot is fine? And also, my left leg is the one that gets injured more often. I bet there's a connection. So a week later, we're going to do a second barefoot run as this big group. And I thought, all right, if I can find a way to run that doesn't hurt the gaping hole that I still have on the ball of my foot, then I'm probably not doing the thing that caused the gaping hole. So let's give it 10 minutes. If I don't do it figure it out in 10 minutes, I'll try again another time, maybe after this wound heals. And 9 minutes and 30 seconds of sheer agony later, I was just about to give up, and then instantly it changed. Instantly, my breathing got easier. My running got faster and lighter. Everything just felt more fun, and there was no pain. And what happened is I stopped what I was doing, and I didn't know it. I was overstriding. So I was landing with my foot in front of me because I'm a sprinter, pointing my toes to land on the ball of my foot. And instead, I just got my feet underneath me. I stopped overstriding. I was using my body correctly, and it was just effortless. And that's what led to my injuries going away, becoming a Masters All-American sprinter. And that's how it all began. So, you know, that listening to your body is critical. I don't recommend going for a run when you have a gaping hole in your foot and using pain, extreme pain, as a way of doing it. But those little things that feel kind of awkward, your brain doesn't want you to do things that hurt you. And it'll try to find a way to change your gait to something more natural. But these cues that we talked about before can be helpful. And we need to remember this other thing. Learning a new physical skill doesn't happen when you're practicing the new movement pattern. It happens in the rest period in between. So you try something and it feels awkward, but it's that, and the awkward feeling is laying down new neural pathways. And then you rest and those get integrated. And then the next time you try, even though you didn't do anything in between these two sessions, you're suddenly better. It's not because of it. This was the instigating factor, but the rest was the integrating factor. And that's what learning is all about. So we need to remember that learning feels frustrating because your brain doesn't like laying down new neural pathways. It's not energy efficient, but that's the way we discover something new.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, you know, we're just talking about like learning these things, and we were born with it, and somewhere we just lost it.
Oh, yeah.
And now we are going back to the natural things and trying to learn it.
It's a funny thing. I mean, you know, babies are not self-conscious when they're learning to walk. They're just, you can see they're trying to figure it out. And, you know, you watch a baby trying to walk and you can see it's a whole body process. They're trying to learn to flex their feet properly and use their feet properly and use that information to balance properly. And, you know, would you ever take a baby and put a stiff thing on their foot that squeezes their toes together and doesn't let them feel or move? I mean, no.
Yeah.
Well, then, you know, why are you doing it to you? But the thing that changes for some reason is as we get older, we become more self-conscious, and we don't like being beginners, and we don't like looking silly, and we don't like trying things that we're not good at. When I'm teaching people how to run barefoot, one of the first exercises that I do is we go out into a field and we're on the grass, because it's not about the running part at this point. It's about something else. And I go, watch how little kids try to run. I mean, like toddlers, babies.
Yeah.
They just let their arms flail. They don't do this. And they kind of, their head is too big for their body. So they kind of lean their head and they try to catch up to their head. And then they move their head and they go in a different direction. And then they move their head and they go in a different direction. And so I want you to do that. And so I want you to like lean your head and let your arms just relax and do whatever. And just don't let your feet catch up to where your head is taking you, and keep moving it around. And I said, and by the way, the people that are around the park, A, they're probably not watching you. And B, if they are, they don't know who you are. You will never see them again. Okay. And so I do this with people until they're just having fun and don't care if anybody's watching. And they want people to come and join them. It's like, let's make it fun. And now we just slow it down a little. Instead of leaning your head so far, don't lean quite so much, but just that little bit that still moves you forward or moves you in the direction you want to go. But you're still like letting your arms relax and letting your feet just land underneath you. If you want to watch, if you watch little kids who haven't gotten into big, thick shoes yet, their form is perfect. They land with their feet right underneath them. They use just the right amount of energy. They have just the right amount of lean of their body, and they're smiling. They're doing it.
Yeah, and they're smiling.
Fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when they're not having fun, they stop and they sit down, and then they get up again when they're ready to have fun. They do it again.
Yeah. And I think this whole transition piece that we're talking about, it's one is going back to the natural thing that we were born with.
Yeah.
And one is also patience, because of all these years and all these cushionings and carbon plates that we've been talking about and, kind of ingrained into our heads. I think we just need patience, because people just want to go faster and they think they can only do this by, and go faster by doing this.
Well, we've also sort of been trained by marketers that the product is the instant solution for something. I mean, that's why, things like this sold so well. It was promoted as an instant solution. It wasn't, but that's the way it was promoted. And we respond to that because we like instant solutions. But the thing that I like to remind people is, imagine that you do break your arm and you put it in a cast. 8 weeks later, 12 weeks later, you take the cast off, your arm is now weak. You have two choices: never use it again, or spend some time getting stronger so that you can use it and you'll be happy and healthy. Well, it's the same thing with relearning how to move properly. It won't take that long. And what you'll get from doing that will benefit you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, we have some comments here, Steven. I'll just put those up. Amelia from Colorado. Yeah. She says, I have no idea what models are available in India, but I want to thank Xero specifically for all the casual shoes you've introduced in the US in the last few years, especially the Phoenix and the Tari. I feel that being able to wear these all the time really helps to transition folks to minimalist shoes, especially during the day at work.
Yeah. A, I agree. And B, thank you. And that's why we do it. What the reason, I wish I could show you everything. In fact, here I got a couple. We have, some casual shoes like this, a little slip on, or we have boots. This is a little lightweight hiking boot, or trail running shoes, or wait, what else do I have? Or for women, we have a ballet flat that, again, a wider toe box, so it lets your feet do what's natural. Here's another one. Here's a casual canvas shoe. So the way all these evolved was just from our customers telling us what they wanted next. So we started out with a do-it-yourself sandal kit, and people would say, well, that's great, but I don't want to make my own sandals. So we figured out a way to make a ready-to-wear version. So all you have to do is slip this on your foot, tighten it up, and away you go. And then people said, yeah, but I don't like stuff between my toes. So we did what's called a sport sandal. So we have the webbing that goes across your foot, except ours weighs 70% less than something familiar. And then people said, that's great, but what do I do in the winter or when I have to go to work? And so we made our first casual shoe. Great. What about performance? So everything just keeps evolving from what people keep asking us. And I don't know what's in India either, because frankly, we've had problems shipping to India. Packages just weren't arriving, and we are expanding very quickly internationally. And so we're working hard to find a way to be selling in India. And I look forward to when we can.
Yeah. Thanks. And another question, Steven, I joined late, due to technical issues. Please advise as to how to treat Achilles tendon and Haglund's deformity by proper shoes. Which shoes are better for this?
I can't answer that question because I don't have enough information. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on the internet, and I don't have enough information to say. What I can say is for things like Achilles tendonitis, there's two issues. One is if you have actual tissue damage, you need to do whatever you need to do to recover, first and foremost. And the second thing is, while you're doing that, you want to have as much mobility as you can get and do as much strengthening as you can do, because strength is the most important thing. So arch height, for example, doesn't matter. Flat feet doesn't matter. High arches doesn't matter. Just being flexible, using those joints, and strength, that's the important thing. Dr. Isabel Sacco in Brazil did research where she had runners in regular shoes doing a foot strengthening exercise program over the course of a year. And the number of injuries with those runners was 2.5 times less than the runners in regular shoes. Now, interestingly, if we go back to talking about Sarah Ridge showing that just walking in minimalist shoes build foot strength, it seems obvious that if you build foot strength from just walking around in minimal shoes, and then you're running in whatever you're running in, injury rates could go down. Again, that study hasn't happened yet, but you can put the pieces together and get it. So what I say to people who have physical conditions is you want to talk to a doctor who understands natural movement. And if you can't find one, you can drop me an email. We'll give you my email later, and I'll point you to some resources where you can find that. There's a number of us who are trying to create a database of natural movement friendly podiatrists and orthopedists and physicians. And I mean, there's more all the time, but there's a number that I can recommend.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that, Steven. Another question: is it good to run barefoot in the ultras or
in ultras,
or can only go for short distances? What will be the challenges?
Well, again, I'm not suggesting you necessarily run barefoot, but it's all about natural movement. So you want something that's going to let your feet spread or your toes spread, let your feet bend and flex and move, give you the traction that you need. So for example, we make a trail shoe with a different sole than say our racing flat. So kind of hard to see, but so that's part one but part two is the simpler thing. If you're running an ultra, and we have people who run ultras in our sandals, in our shoes. We had a couple who did a 7-day, 256K stage race across Madagascar. And when they showed up with nothing but these, people said, well, where are your shoes? And they pointed down at their feet and said, we're wearing them. They said, no, shoes. They said, we're wearing our sandals. That's what we run in. They go, don't you have like backup shoes? They said, we have extra laces. Is that what you're talking about? I said, no. And so, they're running through the water and then through like very dry areas. And everyone at the end of the race who was in regular shoes, their skin was peeling off their feet. They had blackened toenails. And our runners at the end were going, anybody want to do another 20K today?
Oh, wow.
They're totally fine. So, but it's really personal. So, and an ultra means one thing to one person and something else to someone else. So for some people, an ultra is a 50K. For some people, it's 100K. For some people, it's a 24-hour run. So based on what you're doing, you want to do whatever gets you through the night. You want to do whatever you need to do. There's a certain point for many people where they're doing an ultra where they just can't really even move properly. And so the natural movement, natural form is just not possible because they're just trying to get through the next mile. Do whatever you need to do. So I know a number of runners who will start in our sandals and then switch to our shoes. And for the last 5 or 10 miles, they're in some padded thing because they just don't care. They just need to get to the finish line before the time cutoff.
Another question, Steven, are there different running shoes for sprint running versus longer distance running?
Yes and no. Again, people do everything in all of our shoes. So we've had people, so this is a shoe that we call the Speed Force, and it's our closest to barefoot shoe. It's got the thinnest sole, it's got the lightest upper, and this is what I train in as a sprinter and compete in as a sprinter as well. But I know people who wear this to run marathons. So it's, again, personal preference. If you want it's more about how much protection do you need? How much tread do you need? How much grip do you need from the tread? And how much of a barefoot feeling you want. If you want like total barefoot feeling, that's the Speed Force. If you need something with a little more protection, then that's the HFS. If you need something with even a little more than that, we have, like even actually the trail shoe. So this is our Mesa Trail. Embedded in this outsole is a very thin amount of foam to give you that little extra protection for when you're on a trail. And sometimes you can't pay attention to your feet as much as you would like, and you'll land on something that you didn't intend to. So that little extra bit gives you some extra protection. So, and again, the grippier tread as well. So it's a question of what you want to do in it and how much barefoot feeling you want versus how much protection you need. But for us, the most important thing is making sure we don't get rid of that natural movement, that flexibility, and that feedback that you're going to use to be able to move efficiently and effectively and enjoyably.
Yeah. And there's another question. If there are any retail stores to try out these Xero shoes or mainly online, any way to get advice on what works best for a person?
Both. Yes, neither. So if you go to xeroshoes.com and on the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a link that says store locator. You can search our worldwide store available, whatever the word is I'm looking for, retail outlet. Also, if you go to xeroshoes.eu, we just opened up an EU store, or direct to consumer store website. And you can find locations from that as well. And we're opening more stores almost every day. Right now, it's a bit of a lull. So between now and like the middle of January, there's not a lot of new stores bringing on new product. New product comes in roughly in February, and that's when they start coming online. So we have, oh gosh, at least 100 stores that I know of that are getting added to our list of stores
Wow.
by the spring.
Wow. Congratulations on that, Steven.
Thanks.
Yeah. So just was thinking, like, barefoot has been there since ages, right?
Yeah.
I mean, something went wrong in the middle and it continues to go wrong. But I think, it's about just awareness and people to just experiment with their bodies to take it ahead. And do you think there are social implications, like if you're walking barefoot around or just trying to, one is the running and the walking part, and one is your lifestyle. If you're just going to the market and you want to just experience walking from the car to the store. So do you think there are any social implications that people should worry about?
I spend a lot of my time barefoot. And when I'm wearing shoes, I wear the same style in two different colors so that people notice. So the other day I was in a line at the pharmacy at Costco where I go every week to buy groceries. And the guy behind me in line says, "Hey, your shoes don't match." And the pharmacist who couldn't see me says, "Is he wearing shoes?" So, and when people ask me, I'm in Colorado, when people say, "Well, why are you in bare feet?" If they're adults, I say, "Well, if we were at the beach, would you ask me the same question?" They'd said, "No." I said, "Just pretend we're at the beach then. It's just more fun." And if little kids like say to their parents, "Mommy, he's not wearing shoes," and they'll sometimes the parents will say, "You can ask him." And they'll say, "Why aren't you wearing shoes?" I said, "Do you like wearing shoes?" They go, "No." I go, "Me either." "Do you like being barefoot?" "Yes, me too. It's fun. It feels good." Now, for the social implications, it's really interesting. I mean, first of all, it's kind of taboo. It's not illegal. Many people think it's illegal to drive with bare feet. It's not. Many people think it's illegal to go into stores and restaurants in bare feet. It's not. They can have policies, but there's not one state in the United States where it's a health code violation, for example. People say that it's a health code violation. It's not. So I was in a grocery store barefoot and they said, "We need you in shoes." I said, "Why?" They said, "For sanitation reasons." I said, "I'm not worried about my feet getting dirty." And they're like, "No, well, wait, no, we mean the other way around." I went, you're telling me that those people's shoes are clean? They're cleaner than my feet? I wash my feet every day. They don't wash their shoes ever. So I think you have it upside down. But there's some really interesting studies. There was one that was in Japan about kids who were barefoot, especially during recess when they were out playing, versus kids in shoes. And the kids who were barefoot developed socially faster than the kids who were in shoes. And I think the idea is that they just had to pay more attention to themselves and other people, so they didn't step on anyone's feet or have someone step on their feet. And so they were just more socially aware. And I think that we're going to find more information and research about things like that as more and more people are just willing to try this. Most of the research is done on minimalist footwear because they know most people will never go barefoot, and that's totally fine. Here in Colorado, people say, "What about the winter?" I spent my first 10 winters, once I discovered barefoot, either barefoot or in this sandal. And some people wear socks. I just changed the way that I moved around. So I wouldn't go for just a long barefoot journey. I'd do little journeys. I'd go from, I'd park close to the store. I'd go in and come out. If I was shoveling snow, I'd spend a minute shoveling, go in and warm up my feet, then 2 minutes, go in and warm up my feet, then 3 minutes, go in and warm up my feet. And by the fourth time, I could be out for a half an hour or an hour without a problem. And I think the capillaries have changed in my feet because I can handle cold weather much better. My feet don't get cold. My hands get cold.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you've given a lot of time and, effort to actually practice this that you feel so passionately about.
It was just so interesting. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. Stephen, how are like the minimalist shoes that Xero makes? Like, how is it different from the other minimalist shoes in the market?
There are a couple of ways. There are a lot of companies that are selling products that they're calling minimalist or barefoot that are missing some of those important features. Either the toes are too narrow or the midfoot is too narrow. There's shoes from Merrell. They used to call me and say, "We have a new barefoot shoe. Do you want to try it?" I go, "It doesn't fit my foot." They go, well, do you want to try it? I said, I'm just going to sell it on eBay. They go, do you want to try it? I go, yeah, okay, sure. So, and some have too much cushioning and some aren't flexible enough. So you just have to make sure you're getting a true minimalist shoe. The next thing, compared to, say, I'll use Vivo Barefoot because that's our biggest competitor, is we just have a broader product line of sandals, boots, and shoes than they do. We have our 5,000-mile sole warranty, and our prices are more competitive than the other companies that I'm aware of. So those are the kind of key distinctions. Broader product line, more durable, less expensive.
Yeah, yeah. And will Xero ever sponsor an athlete? I mean, just to go in that direction of making barefoot running popular, because you have all the padded shoes doing the rounds and sponsoring,
Yeah.
and obviously there are big companies with a lot of money and all of that. But do you think that switch is going to happen at some point?
It's already starting to happen. We won't just pay someone to wear our shoes. That's not what we're interested in. We want people who tried our product, experience the benefits, and want to share that with other people, and then we work with them. So if you have Ninja Warrior, so the American Ninja Warriors, a couple of the top Ninja Warriors are now wearing our shoes, and we're starting to do work with them where we're sponsoring them, mostly by helping promote what they're doing. So we never want to do things just because it's money. If people don't really believe in what we're doing and want to spread the word, we don't deal with them. We sponsor a number of Olympic teams. So the USA Artistic Swimming Team, they obviously don't wear our shoes in the pool, but they wear them to keep their feet strong and when they're winning medals on the podium. USA Archery, we're talking to USA Taekwondo, USA Ultimate Frisbee, USA Judo.
Wow.
So
You have it sorted.
Yeah, it's getting fun. We have some professional baseball players wearing our shoes, professional basketball players wearing our shoes, professional hockey players wearing our shoes, saying that because they're keeping their feet strong when they get out of their skates, they're skating better, which is really wonderful to hear. So yeah, we're starting to just get more and more people who are professional athletes who are discovering the value of natural movement, and we're working with them.
Yeah, and this is so good because that's how it'll spread, right? I mean, right now, if I just look at runners, there
Yeah.
are not too many people with minimalist shoes. But like you said, there are so many sports teams collectively feeling that benefit. Maybe that word
Well,
needs to get out. Yeah.
I met someone at this trade show that I was just at. They have an artificial intelligence engine where they just watch shoes during races and they calculate how many people are wearing what shoe and how fast they're running, various other things about them. And they
Right.
came up to meet me at the show because they're saying at the last couple of marathons we're suddenly seeing enough Xero shoes that you're on our radar. And so that was very exciting to hear.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a comment here from the barefoot runner, Thomas Bobby Phillip. Being a barefooter, I value my feet a lot. I personally think that I keep my feet far from cleaner than many others I know of. I keep washing my feet possibly every 4 hours.
Oh, I love it. I have a fantasy that Lane and I will build a house that at the front, when you walk in the front door, there's like a little water feature, a little stream with warm water, so people can put their feet in and rinse off their feet and then go into the house.
Yeah, and that happens in the religious place here in India in a gurudwara,
Right.
so they basically wash their feet. I mean, they dip their feet and then enter the religious place.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, this was fun, Steven. One last question I had. So what would be that piece of advice you would give to people who have been thinking or who would want to take that plunge, to go barefoot, but are really, really skeptical because this is like needs patience, needs time, and obviously it's going to work out, better for you. But what is that advice that you want to give to them who are really like skeptical about it?
Just try it on your own. I mean, just, walk around your house barefoot. Many people in India already do, obviously. Just spend more time doing natural movement and then have fun and give yourself a little bit of a test. Try something a little more than what you've done before. Try something a little different than what you've done before. Just experiment, knowing that it may feel weird and awkward and people might look at you strange, but just, use fun as your guide and be willing to be curious and just try something a little new and see what you discover.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Steven. And thank you so much for taking us through this journey
Pleasure.
of yours and opening our eyes to the barefoot world. I'm sure we've seen people, in ones or twos here and there, but I think this is like, a conversation worth spreading
Yeah.
and people more knowing about, which are these brands and about your brand of Xero shoes and just to get to know and kind of experiment it. And like I said, and you also said that it's about experimenting with yourself, and the idea is just self-experimental. And we just need to make use of this ancient technology that we have, and lucky enough to have, kind of inherit our own
Yep.
body,
Yep.
and share the experience with others and the benefits. Because if you experience it and have a benefit, it's about just sharing it with others, and giving Barefoot definitely a shot, and progressing gradually and giving it a shot for sure.
Perfect. You said it better than I ever would.
No. Yeah, and we have someone saying that, waiting for Xero to come to India soon.
We're working on it.
Yeah. And again, Thomas Bobby saying, thanks. That was an interesting discussion. Great insights.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Steven. Thanks for your time. And thank you, everyone else, for taking out this time from all over the world, and being here, listening to us. And for more details, you could go on to xeroshoes.com, and Xero with an X.
Xero.
Xero.
Well, if your computer accidentally does a spell check and makes it Zero, it'll still get to us.
It'll still take you there.
Yeah. And then of course, and xeroshoes.eu as well.
And .eu as well. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.